Welcome back, everyone. We're going to be doing some wash and line work with ink pens and watercolor. And these are going to be studies of how to do trees for the winter, spring, and summer. And I'm going to show you how to do a distant bank of trees that you would see in the forest line or hedgerow or whatever. What I do is I like to mix some Payne's gray and some umber together. It gives you a really nice soft black, but it's not black black. And I just water it down. And I start with the horizon or the edge of the bank of trees. And then I just kind of stab and streak. No special way, but I do want an uneven edge on the top. Now, because it's going to be a bank of trees, you wouldn't necessarily see through the trees at all. So I wanted it fairly, no holes basically on seeing through to the other side. But with a bank of trees, you'll notice that close to the ground it is much darker. So I have just Payne's gray here, and I'm just dabbing again here and there just to let that color bleed into the other color. So I didn't wait to dry. I added it when the other color was still wet. And this way you get a really nice blend. So now I'm going to zoom in for you so you can see what I'm going to be doing now. And it's fairly wet. And what I'm going to do is just clean up that top edge, make it a little softer. You can leave it if you like that look. I just decided to do a softer look on this one. It will dry differently sometimes, so try both ways. And I've decided to add some salt. This really gives some really cool texture. Kind of gives you little openings in the tree line. It looks really cool. While that's drying, I'm going to show you another way of doing a winter tree. We can put the trunk in. I'm just using the umber and Payne's gray mix again. And I'm just putting in the trunk and the main large branches. And then with a Terry Harrison brush, I believe it's a foliage brush, it's a really nice kind of fuzzy brush. And I just dab the end of it into my Payne's gray mix and just dab around the outer edge of where that tree would be. And that'll give you the impression of all those tiny little twigs that are on the top of the tree. And then you can soften it by putting a little bit of water on it too if you want. And then I just take a smaller brush and put in just a few of those other smaller limbs that you would have going through those twigs. Very simple, not very difficult. Anyone could do this. And it gives you that wintry look. Now I'm mixing a little bit of Daniel Smith Green Apatite Genuine with the Payne's Gray Umber mix. And it gives it just a touch of green. And when you're looking at trees or shrubs, you will notice that a lot of times the bark has a slightly green tinge to it. And that just gives it a little bit of a more realistic look. And I just draw a bunch of twigs. See how high stop, go, stop, go? It gives you a more realistic look if you do that. It kind of, well, you kind of have to go and study some trees and bushes and look at how they grow as far as the sticks. it stops and then it turns slightly and then it stops again, it turns slightly. You just have to study things. So spring, trees are usually very bright green and a little bit on the sparse side. When the leaves first start to come out, they're small, so it looks sparse. That's all I can say. And so I just dab a nice bright green, and that was Da Vinci leaf green, I believe. There's lots of bright greens out there, or you can get a hooker's green and add some yellow to it, and you'll get a similar color. So I just dabbed the canopy of the tree, and now I'm going to put in the trunk. And I go kind of in between, wherever there's some white areas there, I'll put some of those main branches in. You can make the branch and limbs go whatever way you want. You could study the different types of trees and see how they grow, because they all have a different form. And now I'm taking a little bit of a darker green, so I've added a little bit of red to that green, and that'll tone it down. It'll darken it and make it more of an olivey shade. So always, if you want a different green, just add the opposite, the complementary color to your green, and that'll gray it down and change it. It's a great way of using up the green you've already put out there instead of making up new ones. Now what I've done is I'm concentrating most of the darker color on the bottom of these bright green blotches. And that'll give the impression of a shadow. And you just don't want a streak of color, a blobs. You want little dots above those blobs, if that makes any sense. Because there's little holes through the lighter leaves that you'll see through where it's shadowed, and that will give that impression when you put those little dots in. And you don't have to make it too thick. Leave a lot of openings because it's a spring tree, so you'd be able to see through quite a bit of it. So now I'm adding more limbs. So as you can see, I'm working around some of these clusters of leaves and adding some limbs in there. So your limbs would be partly covered by some of these leaves, and it could be over top of brighter areas. It could be more in the shadows. Just play with it and see what you like. That's the only way you'll find out. It's a study. So play with it in different ways to see what looks best for your taste. I hear I'm also putting in a few, oh, I missed it. It was a few little sticks on the top of the tree. Sometimes you'll see dead branches on tops of the trees. You could put those in too. And this is going to be more of a summer tree. So, well, kind of a bush. It could be a tree or a bush. Some trees grow in clusters, more than one trunk. So this one, I believe I did this one to look more like a red bud. I have red bud in my backyard, and there's like, I don't know, 6 trunks coming out of the ground, but it's considered a tree. It's a small tree, but it's still a tree. And doing the same thing, I'm putting that bright green as the highlights, and then underneath some of that bright green, I add the darker green. And you could also add even um, another color. I believe I do add even darker. So just not two colors of green. Do three, four. Um, the more you put in it, the more complex it looks. And trees can be very complex as far as their leaves. And vary your marks. Don't make all the same size mark. So I have large blotches, I have small blotches, and little dots, I have openings, and then after you're done that, then I'll put in my stems or my trunks. And again, that's the same mix of the umber, sienna, and I think I put a little green in that one too. But it's so easy, guys. Um, if you're thinking of getting into nature journaling or urban sketching, this is a great exercise to do, and so easy. There's really no way you could mess this up. It's very, very easy to do. A few lines here and there. Smaller branches would be on the top, so they wouldn't be thick marks. Now we'll be getting into the pen work also with this, so some people like leaving this as is, and you could. There we go. So now I'm going to add a little bit more dark, and you'll see how much that changes the looks of everything. It's really fun to do this and take a screenshot of each step, and you'll be really surprised when you go back to look at them of how much a little bit of more color changes the look drastically. There's the little dots. You always have to have those little dots so you're seeing through the little openings in the batches of leaves. Just softening some of those a little bit. And this sketchbook is just plain sketchbook paper. There's that brush again, and I'm just putting in a little bit of grass. It's a great brush to have. Like I said, I'm not sure if you can get these anymore. I know he passed away a few years back. Whether his family is continuing with the products, I have no idea. But imagine you could find something similar. But just use a very small amount. This is I'm putting in a bank of trees behind this tree on the top. And I'm just dabbing, streaking, adding a bit of different colors on my brush. I'm not even cleaning it because I have all green on my brush. So just adding a different green gives you another color. And that's really fun to do too, because then you get a really mix. Okay, so here's our salt mixture. As you can see, there's some really cool blooms in there. I love that when doing this type of work. So you just brush the salt off. Now look at that. I love it. I think that's gorgeous looking. So we're gonna make a little bit more with using our pen now. So this is kind of spontaneous drawing, a spontaneous watercolor, I guess. And I'm just going to put some trees like it would be sticking out. Maybe it's a frosty morning and you're seeing the bark is still dark, but those little twigs are covered in frost. That's what it reminded me of. And the little bushes around the bottom, they're all covered in frost. So um, it looks very magical to me. I get to see this quite often in our where I live because we do get a lot of frost here, and it looks like a fairy tale land when that happens. It's so beautiful, and then the sun comes out. You got about, depending on the temperature, an hour to take pictures before it starts to melt. So I'm just putting now a little bit of limbs underneath these little bushes, and where that salt was, it's darker. So I'm taking that opportunity to use that as little holes where some of the branches are sticking out. So it would naturally be uh, shaded by those branches, and that's what those holes are. I thought that was really cool. So you have to go with whatever develops on your page when you put the salt and water on like this, but it's a lot of fun. You never know what you're going to get. And this is so easy to go. You got to try this. You'll love it. Just a couple colors, a lot of water, and some salt, and then just doodle on it afterwards. Just all you have to do is keep in mind perspective as far as what you're seeing. Is it all a bunch of bushes or is it further back in large trees? So that's pretty well the only thing you have to keep in mind is what kind of perspective do you want? How far away? How up close? And there it is. It could be a bunch of snow on there too. It's so much fun. So I'll show you what we can do other than just paint. That's a masking fluid, and I did a page before this. I'll show you. And this I masked with masking fluid and did my tree, and that way I didn't have to worry about painting around all this little stuff. So you could do that too if you wanted to, and then you'll have your snow and highlights already there for you after you're done your painting. If you would be interested in doing more about the frisket, let me know in the description comments below. So this one, the little bush, I'm concentrating more about where the shadows would be. So I don't do the whole thing in pen. It's just shadow areas basically, or an area that I want to stand out. So naturally it'd be darker down in the bottom and a little patch of snow. You could this is a very fine pen too. It's 005 Micron. And just playing with the trunk, maybe a few shadowed areas underneath some of these trunks. This trunk's got a fair amount of deep color to it, so I probably won't do much as far as pen work in it because it wouldn't be that noticeable. But you could do all kinds of little twigs and stuff like that if you really wanted to get detailed in it. I put a few more on the top there that are, maybe they're dead. You get that sometimes in maples or whatever. But it just adds character to your page. Here I'm just going to play with this one now. So this is another spontaneous watercolor. So play with the shapes. What do they look like to you? And start putting in the trees and bushes, and who knows, maybe you see an animal, maybe you see birds. I put a little pine tree in there, or spruce. Have a little bush in front of it. So just outline that a little bit so it's more noticeable. A little bit more on the bottom. A few dots. Then you have a little scene all by itself. I could do these all day. They're so much fun. And this one here, again, just more or less the shadow areas is what I concentrate on. Everyone's different though. Like, some people like to really get detailed with their pen work. It's totally a personal thing, what you like. Some people don't like a lot of detail. That's why working in your sketchbook is so important. This is where you find what you like, and you study how to do things. You don't have to worry if it didn't work out. You found out something. You found out what not to do the next time. There we go. So those are my little studies of trees for you. So I hope you get your sketchbook out. Make some up. You don't have to go out and find some. You could make them out of your head. Like, just practice. Have some fun with it. All right. So I will let you guys go and have a fantastic day.